This was an episode that I recorded after a series of episodes leading up to Memorial Day of 2019. And I was honored by the Badger Honor Flight people in Wisconsin, as well as our local organization, Heroes for Honor, and invited to go along on one of their trips that they take with various veterans on Memorial Day to visit Washington, D.C. It's a whirlwind tour. Get up early in the morning, go into an airplane, fly out to Washington, D.C., and then come back that night with a bunch of special things happening throughout the day. This episode was a chronicle of that day, and it was a series of interviews that I did throughout the day with various folks that were on that particular flight. And I was just able to gather some of their reactions to the events of the day and some of their recollections throughout the day. I hope that this speaks to those of you that would listen, and maybe you'd pass it on to someone that you think might find some encouragement, or at least know that somebody else had some of the same feelings you've had about those situations. So without further ado, I give you the end episode of a series called Memorial Day Memories, and I hope you enjoy it.
Here we are at the beginning of our special broadcast for Memorial Day. Welcome to the show. I'm here starting the day. I think it's 4:45 in the morning. I'm standing with Brian Ziegler, who has been instrumental in getting me on this trip. So Brian, welcome. Good morning. Thanks for everything. I'm excited about the day. Tell us a little bit about your connection to the flight and Badger Honor Flight in general.
I was the president and chairman of the board from 2009 through 2018, and I've had the great honor of working with some great folks to get Badger Honor Flight up off the ground and to the great organization that it is recognized today. I mean, we're one of the top honor flight hubs in the nation. We work well with our fellow Wisconsin hubs, so if anybody's out there in your listening area that's in other parts of Wisconsin, we learn from them, they learn from us. It's been one of the best things I've ever been involved in my life with as far as civic opportunities. And
I noticed just coming in here how Middleton Fire Department had the huge flags that were hanging. And so right away there's a sense of community getting behind these folks and supporting what's going on.
That's what's important about this mission here. As you also saw, we get youth groups out front. We get Boy Scouts involved. We get Girl Scouts. We get 4-H troops. We get American Legion riders, VFW, Combat Veteran Association riders, those folks. We try and create an atmosphere here to honor our veterans all day long. So what you're going to see here is just a small part, and as I say, it just builds all day. You're going to see a reception here, you're going to see one in D.C., and then the culmination is tonight's welcome home.
And there's a lot going on right now. Can you describe a little bit about what's going on at this portion of the day?
This is check-in. So we bring all of our veterans in through door one, and they're greeted there by folks with American flags. If they need a wheelchair, that's where the youth groups help out. AT&T Pioneers have been here pretty much from day one. They handle the registration area, and that's where they get their jackets and their lanyards and their hats and everything like that. The veterans get their photo taken, and then the American Red Cross has also been here since day one. They open up a canteen here, donuts, coffee, fruit for those healthy folks out there. And then it's a big area opportunity here for family and friends to come send off our veterans. 5:30 we'll have a ceremony, and then at 7 o'clock hopefully wheels up to DC.
Well, thanks so much, Brian, not only for inviting me to come along, but thanks so much for all the work that you've been doing for these vets. I can tell just from the smile on your face that this really does, as we used to say, warm the cockles of your heart.
Yes, exactly. And as a veteran myself, one of the things I love doing is calling our veterans and and I always end it this way: from one veteran to another, thank you for your service, because this is long overdue, and I'm hoping someday that another generation will take care of my generation of veterans. But these folks deserve it so, and we need to take care of them now.
You hear that, next generation out there? Hope you're listening. So there are lots more people to serve in the coming years. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you.
Well, we're here. I'm here talking with my first veteran, my very first veteran, J.D. John Dome. So are you related to Sue and Fritz Dome?
Yeah, he's here. He's on the honor guard. Yep.
John, where did you serve? What branch of the military were you in?
Marine Corps.
Oh, Jarhead. So you guys were the tough Rough Riders, weren't you?
Well, we were one of the early ones in there, that's for sure.
Did you serve in Vietnam?
Yep. Served in Vietnam in 1966, 67. And went home.
You got hit, so you actually were wounded.
Yeah, I got wounded in November of 67, I think it was. Yeah. Ended up at Guam for 2 months. And then from Guam back home. Yeah. Great Lakes Naval at the Marine Casualty Company there for about a year.
So as you're sitting here waiting, because we're in the waiting area right now, getting ready to board a flight, what sorts of things are you thinking about right now?
Not too much anything. It's about time that this happened, but
I've heard that a lot from guys that served in that war.
It happened back in the day when we got out, but it never did. Yeah.
That's to me, that's the most. I get very, very angry when I think about some of the smart people, intellectuals that had the kind of response that they had to you guys. And I guess on part of all Americans that I can represent, I'm so sorry for that. And I do thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Took me 3 marriages to get over post-stress disorder.
Well, maybe the marriages just added to the stress.
No, actually, I think it helped.
So what you said you actually served on the front lines then, right? You were out on.
Yeah. I served with the Arvins in Vietnam, the Vietnamese militia.
Arvin, that was a South Vietnamese organization.
Yeah, that were civilians and some military too. Yeah, yeah.
Did most of your buddies make it back?
Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend of mine from Sauk that he was wounded about the same time I was, and when the powder plant up by Baraboo there burnt, I saw that in the Stars and Stripes magazine, and I had seen this other Marine there, and I recognized him from Sauk. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
I was
nice to see somebody from home.
I was just talking with John Hosheider, who served with her as well, and he was talking about he worked in the munitions area, kind of loading stuff, and how dangerous that job was. But they used to get a kick out of seeing stuff from Badger Army and ammunition.
There too. When I got out and I was able to get around, I worked there for about 4 years in dehydration. Yeah.
Well, thanks for getting up so early in the morning. I suppose that's part of why you're not thinking about right now. You're trying to just wake up.
No, I'm a pretty light sleeper. I'm up during the night quite a bit. Yeah,
Well, thanks for talking with me, John. I'll probably look you up later in the day, too, to see how things are going throughout the day. So, okay. Yep. Thank you much.
You bet. Yeah.
Well, I'm here talking with another one of our veterans from the Sauk Prairie area getting ready to embark onto the plane. Bruce Wayne Walker, otherwise known as Batman Walker, I guess, is here sitting. Bruce, what are you thinking about here as we wait to get on the plane for the day?
Just anticipating what's going to happen the rest of the day, all the great things we're going to see.
Have you had friends that have already taken the Badger Honor flight?
Oh, yeah. I'm VFW Post. We've sent a lot of people out of there so far. Yeah.
What kinds of experiences have they shared? Are there things you're looking particularly forward to?
Oh, they're all just come back overwhelmed. It's just a big, great day.
Where did you serve? What branch of the military were you in?
I started out in the Navy Reserve in Vietnam and the rivers on LSTs. And then
that was pretty, as I remember, I've read, that was fairly dangerous work, wasn't it, being in the rivers?
Yeah, they were always worried about somebody attaching explosives to your ship. If you weren't taking gunfire from the shores, you had to worry about swimmers coming out and attaching stuff to your ship. So,
I've also heard from guys that served in Vietnam that this is particularly a good experience because it's the kind of welcome and treatment that you should have gotten back then and didn't. Do you have some of that same feeling?
Yeah, I kind of snuck home back in the day.
Well, and you think about, I mean, a lot of you guys had to suffer through a lot of stuff to recover from it, and when you got the treatment you got too, I can't imagine what that was like for you.
Wonder what was all worthwhile, you know?
And yet you were serving your country, so that is worthwhile. I mean, just the principle of that, I got to believe that's still an important thing. We wouldn't be free for all the sacrifice that all you guys have made. So
I didn't like the water that well, so I got out of the Navy in 2 years, and that was good enough floating around. So then I joined the Air Guard for 38 years. I was over at Truex here.
Really? So you've been in two forces then, Air Guard and Navy?
Yeah, Air Guard. I was in Iraq in 2004.
So you've seen more than your fair share of armed conflict. Well, I'll look for you throughout the day to see how things shape up for you, okay?
Be more awake then.
Well, maybe I will be too. I'll ask better questions. So thanks again.
Thank you.
So we're still waiting for embarkation on the flight today, but one of the neat features I think of this whole thing is today the Sauk Prairie Choir is down here under the direction of Matt Brennan to do a special honoring song to send off these guys and gals on their trip today.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Well, that wraps up part one of our special broadcast here, Memorial Day Memories. Don't go anywhere. When we come back from this wonderful word from the sponsors that made all this possible today, we're going to have some wonderful interviews with folks that I was able to get to talk to me throughout the day in Washington, D.C., when we traveled there with Badger Honor Flight on May 18th of 2019. So don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss these great testimonials by the folks that were on that trip here on 99.7 Max FM. Well, welcome back to our special broadcast, Memorial Day Memories here on 99.7 Max FM. When we left this first section, we had just were finishing up at the Madison Airport with the Sauk Prairie Choir singing a great rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. So in between then and now, we took a little 1,000-mile jaunt in an airplane to Washington, D.C. I just want to remark one of the cool things that happens when the airplanes pull into the airport there at Reagan International. The fire department at that airport actually sets up with two water hoses and makes a water arch that the plane then passes through in order to get to its gate, which, all of a sudden you think it's raining, and it's not. It's just that there's this wonderful arch being formed. And there are actually pictures of that. If you go out onto the internet, you can see pictures of that kind of arch that they're doing. So again, another great testimony of the way that different service people gather together to honor these folks. The Middleton fire station was there. If you remember at the beginning of the show, we talked about that. Now they have an American flag and a POW flag hanging. So just wonderful tributes throughout the day that different services do for these servicemen and women. So we're going to take you now live. Well, not really, but I was live when I was there at the scene at the Reagan International Airport. And you can hear what was going on and greeted these men and women as they got off of the plane and were first arriving in D.C. for an incredible day of events.
So we're here at the Reagan International Airport in Washington, D.C. And just to describe some of what happens here, when the vets first arrive at Washington, there's a group of people that assemble here that are all clapping for the veterans as they get off the plane. So it looks like an area choir again is singing America the Beautiful for the vets as well. It's just a wonderful thing to see here that there's all these people that have assembled to be able to say thank you to these veterans and to celebrate they're getting here to see these memorials. I've talked to these gentlemen before, and they oftentimes talk about how wonderful it is to get the kind of welcome that they always wanted before, never did get. So, one of those moments where you are proud to be an American. Veterans and their companions are going to come off of the plane. A lot of them are visibly very touched by the support of people here at the airport and at Reagan International Airport. Just a really wonderful sight to see these guys coming through and just feeling like they're being appreciated in ways that maybe didn't happen previously.
I can tell you honestly, a couple of the guys remarked to me after that greeting later in the day how they were just bowled over that these people that they didn't know that were strangers to them had come out at the airport and greeted them like that. I think that we don't appreciate how much that means to these guys and gals. So thank you from here in Baraboo, Wisconsin. We thank the folks of Washington, D.C. that came out and greeted these folks because it made a profound difference to them. From that point, we went on to the changing of the guard at Arlington National Cemetery, which was a very solemn time in the day. It was interesting to go from this very jubilant time at the airport to Arlington National Cemetery, where so many of our armed services men and women are buried. But the changing of the guard was a particularly solemn occasion, and very, very precise work. There's some actual, some pieces we're putting up onto the website so you can see, the precision that these folks move with. And the tradition that's there is just so incredible to watch. And then, of course, our veterans all were assembled together in front of the monument and had their picture taken. Again, that picture's on the website as well if you want to take a look at it. But I really didn't take any time to interview folks at that point. It was a time where I felt it was best to sort of let them have their time and to experience that. But I can tell you that there were some wonderful moments for them as even when they first got off the bus to visit there was a young group of students that were there and visiting themselves. And when they saw the vets come off the plane or off the bus, they started clapping right away and shaking hands. And there's a couple of pictures on the website as well of vets shaking hands and visibly just very excited and touched that these kids stopped what they were doing and were shaking their hands. And I think one of the guys even told me one of the kids handed him a letter, and it was such a neat letter because there was even a little American flag drawn on it and said, "Thank you for your service." So we're going to continue on with some various interviews with some of our veterans at the various memorials that we went to throughout the day. The first one will be with Tommy Thompson at the Air Force Memorial. No, not the Tommy Thompson, but he was a great guy anyways. And then Daniel Andres, I caught up with him at the Korean War Memorial shortly after he had been himself at the Vietnam War Memorial. And then lastly, we'll be talking with Dennis Paul Fishman, the Fish, at the World War II Memorial. So listen closely. These guys have got some great stories to tell and are just another evidence of why we need to honor these folks.
Well, we're here at lunchtime. Just finished a great lunch with some sandwiches and whatnot, and I'm standing here with Tommy Thompson. Well, Thomas V. Thompson from Lodi, Wisconsin. So, Tom, what are your impressions so far? We just got done seeing the Arlington National Cemetery changing of the guard, and now here we are at the Air Force Memorial. Now, what's your impression so far of the trip?
So far, it has just been unbelievable. The precision and the honor that those fellas bring to the table is just unforgiving. Yeah.
Those are Army guys like you were, right?
Well, of course.
So you got to say good things about them.
To taught them everything they know.
So you were in the Army in Vietnam, right?
Yes.
How did you get into the service?
I volunteered for the draft, and that was before you did lottery. And went to Baraboo one day because you couldn't get a decent job. And I went to Baraboo one day and went into the selective service. And I told the lady, I want to volunteer for the draft. She brought out a tablet, put it on the table, and she said, write your name down here. And then she said, well, you're too late to go today. You have to wait till next Wednesday. And I said, well, that's a good thing because I'd kind of like to tell my folks.
It sounds like wimpy. Could I have a hamburger today?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So then you ended up, where'd you end up getting stationed originally or getting your basic training?
I did my basic training, went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne.
Okay.
And I left there to go to Louisiana in, I think it was September. And then the 101st Division went to Vietnam that December. And then I joined up with them again in March of that year. So they saved me just enough of the Tet offenses so that I could enjoy it and get that good on-the-job training.
Now, I've never heard anyone ever describe the Tet Offensive as something they enjoyed, but I think I understand your sardonic humor. And so you were actually there during the Tet Offensive.
Toward the end of that.
Do you have any specific memories of what that was like?
Frightening.
Yeah.
Very frightening. It taught me how to pray.
You know, there's a lot of people I've understood that's combat prayer. We all become converted really quickly.
Yep.
And that was completely unexpected. And when they basically threw everything they had at us, didn't they?
When that started, it was their shock and awe, and it took us by surprise. But we battled back pretty good. And I was stationed up north toward the DMZ and Way, and there was big battles up there but I survived.
So was it you were in an infantry platoon then?
Yeah, pure infantry. And I did that all the time that I was in the regular Army. And then when I went into the National Guard, I was in a cavalry unit, and I was a mortar section leader, and eventually ended up as a platoon sergeant for a tank platoon. And I just loved it.
Sounds kind of like big toys, isn't it?
But my boss used to say, on Friday night, he'd say, let's go over to Lake Michigan. He's got a boat over there. Let's go fishing. I said, I can't. He said, why not? I said, because my hobby is I go to Fort McCoy, get on a tank, go out in the field, and blow stuff up.
Sounds like Tim the Tool Man. Arr, 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 arr.
That was a lot of that.
So now you're here today at all the memorials. Say, any particular memories that come back to you?
I think when we get to the Vietnam Wall, I think that'll be the big one. Yeah.
I understand one of the people that's here today brought some ashes of one of the fellow veterans that didn't make it here. So he was actually bringing them to be able to, pay homage to that guy and wanting him to experience it, at least in his remains.
I look forward to saying hello to some of my friends that I haven't seen in a long, long time.
How many guys did you lose out of your platoon company?
I think there was 4 or 5 right at the get-go that were the most important. And then I think after that, you get a little choosier about how your friends are.
Well, I've heard people talk about how you after that first shock, you kind of have to insulate yourself in a way.
A little bit, but not totally.
Well, you can't. You got to have your brothers in arms, right? Ultimately. So.
Yeah, watch my back.
Yeah, they're not gonna watch yours if you don't watch theirs, right?
That's right.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for talking with us. I'll try to catch up with you maybe after you see the Vietnam Memorial and see. Okay. Yeah. It'd be fun to hear your fun.
I probably won't be laughing as much.
Yeah, well, that's okay too. I think. Well, you deserve a little bit of that, I think, huh?
Right.
So, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm here talking with Daniel Endres from Wanakee. So, Daniel, which branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Army. 1963 I signed up, and we got called up in 68 and served in Vietnam from 68 and 69 for 1 year with the 826th. I was with a bunch of guys from Sauk Prairie area. We were all together. So I know a lot of people from there. So.
What did the 826th do? What was their primary objectives?
We were an ammunition company. We supplied ammunition for truckloads for convoys and things like that. We were in Long Bin, serving Long Bin, so we were there. We were called up because of the Tet Offensive in 68, February. So we got called up to reinforce for the next year. They were thinking they were going to do it again, but it didn't happen. We were on red alert, what do you call it, for that year, but gladly all we saw was rats. So.
So when you think about the day so far, were you able to go over to the Vietnam vet wall and see?
Yes, we were over there, just came from there now, and we've been there once before, but it's always just nice to go back and see it. There's one person I know that's on the wall, so I went and visited his name, and no, it's pretty somber.
Well, I've read things that said that when this memorial came out, in the early 80s, I think, that it was one of the most satisfying memorials in terms of just helping people finally deal with some of the pain of Vietnam and feeling like they at least were finally appreciated for what they did.
Right. Yes, it's a simple memorial, but it's very meaningful. It's just, it says all it has to say, just having your name there, and just a simple, it just focuses on the names, and that's it. So it's very, very unique and very nice.
Have you ever brought, I know a lot of people bring mementos and things that they set at the wall. Have you ever done anything like that?
I haven't, no. I guess I never even kind of thought of it, but I see things laying there, but I didn't bring anything myself, no.
I think there was somebody actually with our group today that was saying they brought the ashes of a friend that had served with them, but he never made it out here. Yeah. So he didn't die in the combat, but he died, in not having an opportunity to see it. So there's seems to be a lot of that sort of camaraderie from what I'm seeing with Fire.
Right. I mean, we were all in this together, so we feel for everybody that's there, but I mean, there's certain ones but it's just a nice reminder. I guess I don't know if it's a nice reminder, but a reminder of what happened.
Well, it seems like it's sort of the kind of thing you may not like it, but you kind of have to go through it just to heal, right?
Right. I mean, we were all over here not because we wanted to be over there, but to serve our country. So whoever died over there, we're all part of that. And so we feel for everybody that died and all the families. So.
Sure.
I just want to say thanks to the Sauk Prairie group that put all this together, and I just thank them for it's a wonderful trip. So,
well, I don't think there's anything less we could do that would even be near what we should do.
So thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much for talking with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Well, we're sitting here at the World War II monument, which is, I think, the last monument we're going to see. And I'm actually honored to be talking with somebody I met at the beginning of today, Mr. Fish, Mr. Dennis Paul Fisher. Right, Dennis? Dennis Paul Fisher. Goes by Fish. So do you play Go Fish? Is that
only with the kids?
Dennis, which branch of the armed services were you in?
I was with the Army. I was a pilot with the 174th Aviation Company. We were an assault helicopter company.
Good.
We flew in I-Corps. Started out in Duck Pho, went up to Quang Tri, flew out of there, Khe Sanh into Laos, then DMZ, and out of Dung Ha we'd fly chase for the Navy when somebody got shot down.
So you were there to try to come and get them, basically.
Yeah.
So you weren't necessarily going in friendly fire areas at that point either?
No. We got shot at almost every day. So
I thought I heard something, we were talking earlier in the day, and you said that you had been shot down half a dozen times. Is that correct?
I've been shot up or shot down over a half a dozen times, and it was less than 4 months.
Didn't they start to worry about giving you a helicopter anymore?
Well, that's when I became a Christian.
Nothing like finding Jesus in the midst of all that, isn't it?
There's no atheists in foxholes. We're in helicopters.
What was that like? I mean, do you still have nightmares about those sorts of things?
Sometimes we do school talks in the area, and that kind of brings things up again. And it's just one of those things you learn to live with.
You were successful in getting everyone down safely every time, weren't you?
Yeah, never lost a person. So we were fortunate.
So that's one way to become a Christian too, is know that the Lord's taken care of you that many times, right?
I have a lot of overworked guardian angels.
That's okay though. That's what they do for a living. So, what are you thinking about as you've been going through this day? What do you think is really standing out to you?
Well, it's I've been to the wall a couple of times, but I went and visited some friends. This is the first time I saw the Korean one, and I thought that was pretty nice. It was interesting to see the faces and look at what they were holding and carrying and what have you.
It seemed like a really, in a weird way, sort of very eerie monument to me.
The faces.
Yeah.
The faces looked...
Yeah, the eyes had and the weariness that was on those faces.
Deep-setted, sunken in. Yeah.
And the detail in the clothing, I mean, all of it.
It all was good. Everything.
I went back and looked at it from the very front of it, from the beginning of the point, and it struck me, too, that how the artist had even arranged things in a way that just kind of settled it in. I don't know. What was your experience when you were looking at it?
I thought pretty much the same thing. There were things I noticed, like you had 2 or 3 of them carrying radios, and if you had a platoon, I don't think they had more than one usually. But it's just interesting how they had them set. And they were like a V shape and then a diamond on top. So
what have you been doing since you got out of Vietnam?
Well, I spent 5 years basically as a bed patient. My wife took care of me. And then it took me approximately 5 years to learn how to walk again with the help of a chiropractor. After that, I was separated from the military. I'm disabled, retired, regular Army.
Okay.
My wife and I purchased a nursing home in Black Earth in '75. And then we sold it in '82 and moved to Oklahoma. I helped start a real estate company there.
What?
Came back to the Wisconsin because family had passed away and my wife's family was ill. And now we own a mobile home park up in Sparta, Wisconsin. Keeps me occupied and out of trouble.
Sounds like it keeps you off the streets at night.
Yeah.
So did you, it sounds like you must have been then when the last time you were shot down, you must have been injured pretty badly.
At first I thought it was just pulled muscles. But later I couldn't, when I went to get out of bed after sleeping all night, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't move my legs. So it took me a while. I finally got things situated. And it took me half the day to get to the medic's tent. And flight surgeon sent me to the hospital. And from there they sent me to Camp Zama, Japan. In Camp Zama, Japan, they told me I had compression fractures up my spine and damaged the nerves in my legs. So they told me I'd not walk again without assistance. So I figure I'm doing pretty good.
I've seen you walking around here just fine, better than I am, so no problems there from what I can tell, Dennis. So do you, I was thinking of something as you were talking that how it seems like it really is a story of restoration in your life, from coming out of war is hell and just seeing the Lord work in your life in some really wonderful ways.
Oh, yes. I've been very fortunate. When I came home, I had a wife that didn't divorce me, and she stayed with me. Matter of fact, I offered her a divorce, and that was the first time she ever really got mad at me.
Oh, wow.
She said we got married for better or worse, and we're going to get through it. And we have.
Better love has no man or woman that they lay down their life.
That's right.
So you did it, she did it, everyone did it in your family. So are you, anything in terms of just overall impact of the days, is there anything that stands out for you today?
Well, I'm glad I got to share this with my son. He and I went back to Vietnam a few years back with the unit I flew with. We went to all the places we flew out of, and he was with me on that. So this kind of like is the coup de grace of him learning about my time in Vietnam.
I just have to ask, how do you become a helicopter pilot? Out of all the things that someone could do when they get into the Army, how did that process work?
Well, they did away with college deferments, and that's the only lottery I've ever won. So instead of letting them draft me, I always wanted to be a pilot. The only branch of service that would let me fly because of education was the Army. And so I enlisted in the Army for the Warrant Officer Canada program. And we started with a class of almost 300 and graduated 92. So
Creme de la creme.
they tried to break you. And
So were you
I
flying
loved it.
Hueys? Is
I
that
flew slicks, yeah.
So there's one of those, I think, in the World War II memorial in Sauk.
That's a Cobra gunship that's at the VFW post. But downtown in Madison at the War Museum, there's a Huey gunship, and that's one of ours. We were the Sharks and the Dolphins, and that aircraft was one of our gunships, and it's set up just the way it was when it was with our unit.
Well, Dennis, thanks so much for talking to me. Thanks for your service. Thanks for. I hope this day continues to be as rewarding as it appears to have been so far.
I think it will be, and thank you.
Pleasure.
That wraps up part 2 of our special Memorial Day Memories broadcast. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to wrap it all up here on 99.7 Max FM. Well, we're back here for the final part of our special broadcast here on Memorial Day Memories. And I have to tell you, I was absolutely wrong when I said in talking with Dennis Fishman that we were at the last memorial. We had 2 more memorials to visit. The Iwo Jima Memorial, which if you ever go there, look for the hand of God. You'll know what I mean when you get there. Look for the hand of God on that memorial. But then we finally ended up at the Pentagon 9/11 memorial. And it was there that I got a chance to sit down and talk with a well-known Baraboo resident. Before we do that, I just want to have a shout out too for all the volunteers. If you're interested in this program, if you're interested in Badger Honor Flight, contact those folks and find out how you can volunteer. Because I got to tell you, one of the really wonderful things of the day was watching these volunteers just hustle like crazy to make sure that there were drinks and snacks for each of the veterans to keep them in top form throughout the day. They were there with wheelchairs. If they noticed that somebody was getting in trouble and needed a rest, they were right there to help them out. I mean, just an outstanding group of people that were making this all possible. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, get a hold of Brian Ziegler and the folks at Badger Honor Flight, and I'm sure they'll find a way to use your desire to serve. So without further ado, let's hit it with our last interview for the day. I ran across Police Chief Kluge in the early part of the day and was able to see him at the Pentagon Memorial and got this opportunity to talk and have him share some of his stories of his service.
Well, we're here at the 9/11 Memorial, which is actually the Pentagon Memorial for the 184 people that lost their lives on 9/11. And I'm here with a man that I started talking to at the beginning of the day and wasn't smart enough to have my microphone on at the time. Dennis Kluge is here. Dennis, you were a former sheriff in Baraboo, were you not?
Police chief. Yeah.
So you've seen it all pretty much in that job, I would think.
Well, a lot of things, yeah.
So how did that compare? Now, so you were in the service. When did you serve? What branch of the services were you in?
I was Army 1970, 1971. That I was over in Vietnam, I should say. 68 to 71 was my tour.
So towards the end of the conflict, right?
Yep.
What sorts of things were you doing?
Well, I was actually mortars is what my MOS was. And when I got over there, I was with the 101st Airborne Division up at, first saw at Camp Evans and then out at Fire Base Birmingham.
You were telling me earlier this morning you had a really fortuitous situation where you ran into somebody from Wisconsin. Tell us a little bit about how that whole thing worked out.
Well, it was kind of unique, and I've never been able to locate the kid again. It's from Stockbridge, Wisconsin, supposedly. But when I landed over there and at Camp Evans, there was, 100 plus of us, and we were standing in front of a building and a little podium or a little riser there, and Spec 4 was setting up there, and he was calling off the names and assigning it to different companies you should go to. And he called my name out and says, Sergeant Kluge, and says, you're Echo Company. And I started to walk away, and he called me back in front of everybody. He said, come over here and stand at the bottom of this riser over here. And so I walked over there, and I waited. He talked, called some more names and stuff, and he leaned over, and he says, hey, so I'm from Wisconsin. He said, I'd like to hear what's going on back there. Come on back and see me. And I says, all right. So I left, went up to Echo Company, and as it ended up, I was immediately shipped out right away out to Birmingham, and got out there, and my MOS was 11 Charlie. It was mortars, and I ended up there's too many sergeants in the unit, and they took me and they asked would I want to go in the radar. I knew nothing about radar, but I was game to try anything. So I got assigned to radar on the other side of the hill, and I was there 4-6 weeks, something like that, I suppose. And I just walked in across the fire base one day, and a guy come up and said, Sergeant Kluge? And I said, yeah. He says, they're looking for you back at Evans. He says, because something's happened in Wisconsin. Somebody got hurt or something. And I thought, oh, no. So they got me on a truck, got me back right away to Evans. And I got back to Evans. They said, go see the first sergeant at Headquarters Company, and which wasn't my company. And I thought, that's odd. But I went there, got into their orderly room area, and as much as it was. And the guy who was sitting there appeared to be the first sergeant. And I told him who I was. And he says, where have you been? And I said, well, I've been out on the fire base, whatnot. And he says, yeah. He says, so-and-so, Spec 4 so-and-so, said you'd cover for him while he's gone. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. His dad got hurt. His farm accident back in Wisconsin. He had to go home on emergency leave. And during the 30 days he's gone, he said, you'd cover for him. I don't even know who the kid is, And I said, I don't know. And he says, well, do you know anything about running Headquarters Company here? I thought, whoa, it's a lot better than setting out on that fire base and taking mortar rounds. And I said, yeah. And so I was just kind of winging it back there. And it took probably about 2 more weeks. And in the middle of the night, I remember it happened. This kid comes in, and I should say at Evans, I actually had a real bunk, And so I was in that bunk, and he comes and rouses me out of it and says, hey, you're in my bunk, get out of here, And so I went and I slept in a chair the rest of the night. Next morning, sad to say, it was early, and we got another Red Cross message. The kid's dad had passed away. And he told me, he said, I thought he was going to pass away, but my time ran up at home. I had to come back. And he was immediately sent right back. And so as it ended up, I rode the rest of my tour out there at Evans, and, thanks to that young man, but I say I don't know who he was. I don't have his name other than he's from Stockbridge, and I tried to locate him and haven't had much luck at that.
So were those experiences part of what made you think go into police work when you came back?
No, I'd actually, I guess I was, if you go back and ask the officers that did my background when I first started at the Bearville Police Department, they would say that I came from kind of a mixed life, if you will, as far as getting in trouble with the police over in Portage, because I had a lot of interest in the cops because I kind of got to know them in probably not the greatest ways, but anyway, I had a lot of respect for them, just the greatest respect. And I had an officer that lived up the street from our home, and I thought the world of that guy and what he was doing and everything. And so that got my interest. And then when I joined the Army in Bearville, I actually applied to be a military police, and ended up that for whatever reason it never happened. And so then I actually applied at the Bearville Police Department while I was in the service. And after I came home from Vietnam, probably about a year later actually, and Al Owens was the captain at that time, and he gave me a call, and he says, your name's on the list for the police department. You still interested? I'd then been working at the plant. The plant was closing down, and I was ready to grasp at any job at that point. And I thought, yeah, I'll try that, So I went to the police department, and that was 35 and a half years later that I walked out the door again.
What sorts of things are you thinking about or remembering, or what's it mean to you think, right now?
Well, I guess it's overwhelming what you see out here, and I've been down to other honor flight returns, and I've seen what Madison, what Wisconsin does for their veterans. Tremendous. But I was blown away when we got out here and you saw it at the airport in Washington, D.C., that, I would think that we are nobodies out in this great big city. They don't know us, and I wouldn't think care about us, but I was dead wrong. I mean, they got such respect. And I mean, it's every place you go, people are shaking your hands and thanking you for your service and everything. And it's just overwhelming. And the other thing I should say, to any veteran back in Wisconsin who has not applied for this thing, please go out and apply for it. You don't know what you're missing. And I mean, they treat you with such respect. It's unbelievable.
Well, thanks again to former Chief Kluge. What a great story about the luck of the Wisconsinite, huh? How's Cheeseheads? Go Cheeseheads. So that was the last interview I did for the day. And then when we got back to Madison, some wonderful things happened. But before we got there, there's a couple of other traditions that they do as part of Badger Honor Flight. There's a mail call. So while we're on the plane and traveling back to Madison, they do mail call just like you would do it in the services. And the mail is particularly wonderful because it's letters from relatives and, grandkids and, sons and daughters and friends and just people throughout the community that want to contribute and say thank you. So I went up and down the aisles and watched these guys and gals reading these letters. And there were more than a couple of tears in people's eyes. And it was just wonderful to see another way that they were touched by not only all the things that happened through the day, but then the thanks that were bestowed upon them by those closest to them, and in some cases, complete strangers to them. So, and then we finally get back to Wisconsin and start getting off the plane. And again, the service people from our area get involved. There were members of the sheriff's department and the police department standing in an honor guard right at the end of the walkway from the plane. So that was one of the first things they saw as they got off of the plane. And then as they headed out, they were taken off in small groups, about 5 veterans per group, and they would walk through the doorway into the vestibule area of the airport. And the general there, the general for the contingency in Madison, stationed in Madison, was there welcoming them each individually back, shaking hands, asking them about their trip. And this was the same general that had been there at 4:30 in the morning, sending them off on the trip. So, and then there are servicemen and women from current forces there stationed in Madison area that were there to help and assist them get down the escalator and get into the vestibule area and meet the literally thousands of people that were waiting to greet them. So as we're finishing up this broadcast, again, thanks so much to all the people that made this possible. You can hear for yourself the kinds of stuff that was going on in that airport at 9:30 at night, which was, again, wonderful. There's a big band playing music. There's a bunch of people just screaming for each of these folks as they're introduced and brought down. And the Uncle Sam is there. People with flags on top of flags on top of flags are there cheering for them. And it to me, it was one of the best days of my life. And I have to tell you, I saw more than a couple of folks just, I think, changed for their life as a result of this experience. So thanks again to everyone. Thanks to Badger Honor Flight and the great work that you folks are doing. Again, if there's any veteran out there listening today that has not been a part of the trip, take Chief Kluge's advice and get registered. So that you can be and enjoy, be on and enjoy a flight like these folks did. Take care, folks. Happy Memorial Day.
And this is for the ones who heard the fight for freedom calling. For the ones who answered, I'll do what I can. For the ones who ran the battle, who believed that freedom mattered, well, this is for you. And this is for the ones whose orders took them to the front line. And for the ones who fell and never made it home. And for the ones who came back broken, with memories too hard to be spoken, this is for you. We remember, and we are thankful, we are grateful, and we know freedom isn't free. Oh, we remember, the gift you gave, the price you paid, it's not in vain, and it will never